Begin the news at this hour in West Africa, where the military regimes in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have announced their immediate withdrawal from the West African bloc ECOWAS. The leaders of the three Sahel nations issued a statement saying it was a sovereign decision to leave the economic community of West African states without delay. Struggling with terrorism, the regimes have had tense ties with ECOWAS since coups took place in Niger last July, Burkina Faso in 2022, and in Mali in 2020. Now, all three were suspended from ECOWAS, with Niger and Mali facing heavy sanctions. They have hardened their positions in recent months and joined forces in an alliance of Sahel states.
Leurs Excellences le capitaine Ibrahim Traoré, le colonel Assimi Goïta et le général de brigade Abdourahmane Tchani, respectivement chef d'État du Burkina Faso, de la République du Mali et de la République du Niger, prenant toutes leurs responsabilités devant l'histoire et répondant aux attentes, préoccupations et aspirations de leur population, décident en toute souveraineté du retrait sans délai du Burkina Faso, du Mali et du Niger de la communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, fait à Ouagadougou, à Bamako et à Niamey le 28 janvier 2024. Merci de...
Meanwhile, the West African bloc ECOWAS says it is ready for a negotiated solution after Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger said they were quitting the group. ECOWAS said the three countries are important members of the community and the bloc remains committed to finding a negotiated solution to the political impasse. ECOWAS said they were yet to receive any direct formal notification from the countries about their withdrawal.
Nous sommes là parce que c'est une demande des peuples des États du Sahel pour sanctionner la CEDEAO qui, à l'origine, était partie pour être une CEDEAO des peuples, mais qui s'est avérée être un instrument au service de l'impérialisme français.
Nous sommes libérés de cette CEDEAO-là.
And joining me on the news to talk about this is a policy analyst at Development Reimagined, Ovigwe Egogo. Good morning. Glad to have you join me.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, accuse ECOWAS of inhumane sanctions to reverse the coups in their nation, as reasons for them pulling out. Do you think this daring move by these West African countries have a justification?
Well, I don't think it's a question of justification because it's a sovereign decision. They're not instructed by anybody to be in ECOWAS. They don't have to be in ECOWAS, actually. Countries come together to decide to be in a supranational organization. So if they don't want to be part of it, they can decide to leave at any time. That's their choice. Now, the question there is, why are they doing this now? Because even pressure from ECOWAS has really reduced. If we are looking at, if we compare this to just immediately after the coup in Niger last year, so that's a more important question that I think might even be upsetting so many people in ECOWAS because they just can't really figure out why this group of countries are making this decision. Already, we know they've launched the Alliance of Sahel States, which shows much more deeper collaboration and cooperation between them. They've signed several treaties in that regard. So I think it's a bit, bit strange that they're doing this now.
Mm. Now, looking at one of the allegations they made, they allege that ECOWAS has moved away from the ideals of Pan-Africanism nearly after 50 years of its establishment. I mean, looking at how the regional body has reacted so far and also handled military coups in these countries, I mean, do you think ECOWAS is culpable?
Well, ECOWAS has acted in line with its charter. There is, of course, a strong aversion to military takeover in the sub-region in particular, although there's an EU part of it, but ECOWAS is particularly bullish on the issue. And it's not without justification. They know because in this region, we've seen the most coups more than any other sub-region in the African continent. So it's a very serious issue for West Africa. However, some people see ECOWAS as a club or a union, as it were, for presidents. They just use the bloc to protect themselves and not really hold themselves accountable. I mean, if you look at Guinea, for instance, Alpha Conde tried to extend his tenure. There was really very little pushback from the bloc, and then you had the coup in Cote d'Ivoire. Ouattara, ran for extending his term for a third time. So it's a challenge for people who are looking at ECOWAS as not being strong enough for this extension of term limits. Meanwhile, when military officers take charge, then they are more aggressive. So I think that disparity is one of the main challenges people have with the bloc.
Let's look at recent happenings. I mean, recently, in recent years, ECOWAS has been described as a puppet of foreign powers, unlike the African Union, has not really been effective when it comes to providing support, dealing with terrorism, and also ensuring regional growth and stability within the bloc. How true is this?
Well, ECOWAS as a union, or as a community rather, it's not necessarily a security, or primarily a security community. I mean, in the words, it says economic community. So that tells you what the front and center objective is. So we have, of course, a common border, a common market, and people move freely between the community, right? But in the years ECOWAS have existed, for most of the years ECOWAS have existed, this has been the main issue. It's only in the last 20 years we've really had terrorism come up and many transnational crimes come up that ECOWAS has been tested. And in the last 2 decades, ECOWAS has not really been up to par. That's clear for everyone to see. Where you could remember there were times where we even had the ECOMOG set up the monitoring group to take care of issues around civil war in Liberia, in Sierra Leone and places like that. It will seem to be more active for conventional security threats, but for unconventional threats, like we say with banditry or with drug trafficking and terrorism, I think the bloc has been found wanting in that regard. So maybe that should be the focus of leaders across the sub-region, rather than the very militaristic take the response that they've given to coups, particularly the one in Niger.
But do you see this bloc, ECOWAS, gradually losing its relevance in Africa?
No, I don't think so. I think what we're seeing with these three countries, if they really do push on and make that formal notification, mind you, they've not really formally notified ECOWAS of their withdrawal. If they do so and formally withdraw from the bloc, I think, of course, that's a blow to ECOWAS. We're going to be losing three countries who are really the center in the Sahel, and gives ECOWAS that we could say political size that is enviable across the continent. However, I think if ECOWAS doesn't really find a sensible and smart way to go around this, and these countries eventually break off, what is more likely to happen is that there might be a coup in another country in West Africa. After there were attempts after the one in Niger. If you have a coup in another country, West Africa, what the new country tends to do with the new junta would align with AES, that's the Alliance of Sahel States, to withdraw themselves from any form of commitment to ECOWAS and so work on pressures. And this might lead to a real deepening of the fissure we're currently seeing.
But do you think this pullout by these three West African countries would impact trade in West African region?
Yes, it will impact their trade for them more than for the rest of the bloc, because they are all landlocked countries. Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, these are countries that depend on coastal ECOWAS states for trade, movement of certain goods and services, right? So it is actually for them to prepare themselves for the long-term impact. Already they are under sanctions, so they don't even and I'm sure they've watched themselves over the couple of few months that they've been under sanctions, and they have been able to maintain. We know borders are very porous, so of course they are still able to get some goods from states, but official cross-border trade and export and all of this might be a challenge. I think they would be looking to push their exports through Guinea, which is another country led by a junta. They've been able to get some trade from that. At least Mali has been able to get cross-border trade from Guinea. So they have options. They've done lots of work. The Prime Minister of Niger has just been on a recent diplomatic tour visiting Iran, Russia, UAE. They must have discussed these things with their partners, and they know what's coming for them. So we'll just wait and see how they respond, how this impact their trade and how they're going to work around it.
Okay, now aside Russia that Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger are curtain, are there alternative blocs or groups that these countries belong to or may even opt to belong to just to advance their social well-being and also military objectives?
So the only other alternative that you could really think of at the moment, given the geographic location of these countries, would be censored. They might not even be admitted into the Maghrebi Union. You know, the IGAD. So there are several regional economic communities around ECOWAS, ECAS, but they don't need to. That's the point, because joining those economic communities, the other regs, is going to put pressure on them again, because those regs might have their own rules around, unconstitutional change of government and all of that. So I think what they really want to do is fold together these three countries, work towards more deepening of political, economic, security cooperation, and then later on, if they're able to hold on to power, then they come out and probably even join ECOWAS again as AES, or joining ECOWAS being recognized now as they are, or as they will be at that time.
Now, looking at these possible alliances, do you think these three countries, are better off on their own, or they will may likely struggle in coming years?
The main challenge to them outside of ECOWAS it really is the trade. And if they can figure that, and I think that's would have been one of the main issues that they've been discussing with their partners, even around the region, even with Guinea, for instance. Once they can find a way to solve their trade issues, they can bring in goods and services to service their people. Many of the other issues, like for instance, electricity in Niger, that Niger was getting from Nigeria, they could find another country. Grids take time to be built, or they could even invest in. I don't see anything strange in them getting, for instance, Iran coming to build an electricity power project for them, because they have these countries across the world that they can work with, right? So it really is the movement of people, and West Africa is such that you could still have this movement irregularly, but African countries themselves surrounding them would also need to engage with this country, because there are still markets, to however small that they are. So their bet is staying together, weathering the storm with ECOWAS, with pressure from external factors, which they can do by working more closely together.
All right, thank you so much for your insight on the news. Ovigwe Egu, a policy analyst. Thank you once again. In a related development, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Niamey to celebrate the announcement made by the military regimes in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger on their immediate withdrawal from the West African bloc, ECOWAS. The Prime Minister appointed by Niger's regime on Thursday blasted ECOWAS for bad faith after the bloc largely shunned a planned meeting in Niamey. ECOWAS blamed an aircraft technical fault in Abuja for the cancellation of its mission to Niger.
Nous sommes là parce que c'est une demande des peuples des États du Sahel pour sanctionner la CEDEAO qui, à l'origine, était partie pour être une CEDEAO des peuples, mais qui s'est avérée être un instrument au service de l'impérialisme français.
Nous sommes libérés de cette CEDEAO-là. Au diable leurs sanctions. Et on considère que dorénavant, il y aura des accords bilatéraux avec les autres États. Donc c'est fini avec cette structure satanique qui veut étouffer le peuple nigérien ou bien le peuple du Sahel parce qu'ils ont décidé de quitter.
And now to Nigeria's southwest. The chairman of the Lagos State chapter of the People's Democratic Party, Philip Aivoji, who was abducted by some yet-to-be-identified gunmen along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, has regained his freedom. Aivoji was released 4 days after he was abducted on Thursday. Aivoji and some other party chieftains were abducted at the Ogere area of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway on Thursday while returning from the party stakeholders zonal caucus meeting convened by Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde and held in Ibadan, the state capital. His release was disclosed by the state's publicity secretary, Hakeem Amode, in a short statement issued around 1:15 a.m. on Monday. And stakeholders in Nigeria's northeastern state of Borno State have called on the government to build strong institutions, ensure quality and effective leadership, and a transparent governance process as an effective measure in tackling the challenges facing Nigeria. And this was during the Ahmadu Bello Memorial Lecture, which held in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, where they identified good governance as a key pillar in the effort aimed at tackling insecurity and terrorism. News Center's Umaru Kirawa reports.
The lecture provides a platform for stakeholders to engage in critical conversations about pressing issues affecting northern Nigeria and the country as a whole. Stakeholders in attendance emphasized the important role good governance plays in tackling insecurity, promoting economic growth, and boosting social cohesion among citizens. They stressed on the importance of having strong institutions, quality and effective leadership, and a transparent governance process as fundamental pillars in combating the challenges facing Nigeria.
You cannot see a problem in the house of your neighbor and you keep quiet. When they finish with your neighbor, you will be the next. Whatever happens, we must all come together to make sure that we fight it and we nip it in the bud.
So we need our men to please include us whenever they are looking for this solution.
Any problem affecting the northern part of Nigeria is a problem for Nigeria as a whole. Nigeria is a major global leader. Forget what other people tell you that Nigeria is not important. It is important.
Some of them highlighted the need for inclusive governance, which involves engaging marginalized groups, empowering youth, and promoting social justice. They maintained that addressing the underlying socio-economic factors that contribute to these vices is crucial to creating sustainable peace and development in the region.
We are committed to promoting peace, unity and development in our region. The chosen theme for this year's lecture, Creating Pathways for Peace, Tackling Banditry and Insurgency through Governance for Sustainable Development, is both relevant and timely.
We are determined to bring the temporary eclipse bedeviling northern Nigeria and by extension the Federal Republic of Nigeria to an end by tasking those saddled with the responsibility of maintaining security, law and order to be alive to their responsibilities.
In every reason behind insecurity, in every reason behind poverty, every reason behind conflicts and distress, you're likely to find corruption.
Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima, who was represented, emphasized the need to shun rumors that affect the fragile peace and unity in the country. He dispelled recent reports claiming that government intends to change the political and administrative capital of the country from Abuja to Lagos, insisting that Abuja remains the seat of governance as opposed to rumors making the rounds suggesting that there are moves to change its position. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Away from that, the Nigeria Data Protection Commission says it is actively investigating 17 major cases of data breaches across various sectors, including finance, technology, education, consulting, government, logistics, and gaming or lottery. The National Commissioner of the NDPC, Dr. Vincent Olatunji, disclosed these at the Global Data Privacy Day on Sunday in Abuja. He adds that the Commission got over 1,000 complaints of data breach, which led to the investigations. Olatunji also said the Commission's operations in the country have led to 400 million naira revenue for the government. The Controller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, NCS, Adewale Adeniyi, over the weekend disclosed that the service will reintroduce 24-hour operation at the nation's seaport. Adeniyi, on his visit to the Managing Director of the Nigerian Port Authority, NPA, Mohammed Bello Koko, at the authority's headquarters, said one of the seaports will be used as a pilot test for the operation. He adds that there was a need to have round-the-clock security for other ancillary service providers to key into the operations. The Lagos State government in Nigeria's southwest has continued demolishing illegal shops and buildings surrounding the Mandela's building gutted by fire on 21st January 2024. The State Commissioner for Fiscal Planning and Urban Development, Oluyinka Olumide, says this ensures easy access for vehicles and pedestrians in the market. News Centre's Omoniyi has details.
The traders were permitted to remove their goods before demolition began.
There are airliners offices there, law offices or law firms are there, shipping and logistics companies are there, club is also there, hotel is also there, and shops or stores, warehouses are also there.
They tried as much as possible to see if they could quench the fire, but then getting access into this place, of course, a marketplace, as you can see, was a problem for them. And so that's why I believe this brought about this demolition of the attachment shop by the plazas.
Then, the demolition exercise, which is an attempt to restore order to the environment following repeated notices and warnings. Authorities say emergency vehicles are often hindered in Lagos Island market due to the lack of adequate vehicular access to distressed buildings. This was the case for the 15-story Mandela's Mall that was gutted by fire on January 21, located on Broad Street, where emergency trucks had difficulty gaining access. In a briefing with journalists, the Commissioner for Fiscal Planning and Urban Development stated that this exercise, which is continuous, is part of the state's urban renewal agenda.
The corridor is going to be totally cleaned up, and not only, let me use the opportunity to tell Lagosians, this is not going to be peculiarly to Lagos Island. It's the whole state now. We have to clear off all those shanties. But again, people should remove that mentality of staying on the street. You can be in the shop and still make your market.
Also, unauthorized construction without permits will not be tolerated, as the Lagos State government says it is set to enforce compliance with all applicable laws.
We are going to ensure that that is not repeated, because we are not going to allow those chances to be there. However, there are other agencies that are looking into development of markets for them. It's just that people don't want to do the right things.
Huge fire gutted the 15-story building on January 21, resulting in the loss of billions of naira in property and goods. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omoni.
As climate disaster continues to ravage society, leaving its effects very glaring, frontliners have been urged to bring on board every necessary machinery to mitigate its effects even before they occur. And this was a thrust of a 3-day engagement by Center for Gospel Health and Development in conjunction with the National Emergency Management Agency in Jos Plateau State Capital, Nigeria's North Central. News Centre's Chizoba Anyonwe tells us more in this report.
A stitch in time saves 9, they say, and that is why these community members converged on Jos to deliberate on measures that will mitigate adverse effects of climate change, which has become a cankerworm in various societies. According to research, drought and reduced rainfall, combined with rising air temperatures, inhibit the country's hydropower systems and hinder agricultural production and fishing, reducing food security and negatively impacting health and nutrition. This is why this event has become pertinent for stakeholders if the societies will be saved from adverse effects of climate change in rural areas.
During the rains, we have flooding and all that. So we just hope that after these 3 days of meeting with our community members, they'll be more prepared. They will go back and step down whatever they've picked from this meeting to improve themselves and to build their communities.
These community people are the grassroots. They are the one are the first responders when this disaster occurs. So we're going about now trying to equip them with the knowledge of disaster management so that when it happens, the impact will be minimized.
This training is, to further empower frontline, workers on how to respond at that level before intervention will come from, the government or other non-governmental organizations.
With resources put in place, it would be an effort in futility if the message, as imperative as it is, fails to reach the rural people.
While erosion, it could be windstorm, it could be any other disaster, because there are disasters that are caused by man and those that are natural. So we should all be prepared and we'll step it down to the people.
Coming to trainings like this will help us gather more information on how to be proactive towards these disasters, that is as a result of climate change that we're witnessing.
To step down to our communities so that we'll take a response to it in preparedness to awaiting if such things occur.
In cases of emergency, it is expected that these frontliners will aid respondents in containing the situation in terms of first aid before help comes. Asia is currently facing alarming challenges due to climate change and variability, as illustrated by various climatic models predicting the global mean temperature will increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius between the year 2030 and the year 2050 if it continues to increase at the current rate. In Jos for News Central, I am Chizoba Anyonwe.
As one of the most populous countries in Africa, Nigeria's consumption capacity holds great potential for the recycling industry. A Nigerian company is giving old tires a second life, turning waste into bricks, floor tiles, and even flip-flops. The report.
To a report by the Tire Industry Project, 1 billion end-of-life tires are generated globally every year, and an estimated 4 billion are currently in landfills and stockpiles worldwide. However, in Nigeria, one company is helping to reduce waste through recycling. Free Recycle is transforming old tires into paving bricks, floor tiles, flip-flops, and other goods, and since its launch in 2018, the company have recycled over 400,000 tires into new products.
We've been doing our best to educate the general public on the need to embrace recycling. You know, there's wealth in waste. Most people don't know that, but I'm happy that quite a number of people have started identifying opportunities in recycling.
If the person of the trust of the company, if the product is okay, there's no problem about that.
For bungalows, I don't think there is much risk in it. For bungalows, basically. You can play around with bungalows. But if you are raising the load beyond bungalow level, it may not be advisable.
We need to welcome new innovation. So I will consider it, but with a proof. Probably I've had one or two people that have used that bricks from that same company that is introducing it from a tire, production.
Then mixed with an adhesive that lets workers shape the waste into all manner of products, which is believed to have prevented more than 8,100 tons of CO2 emissions since it began.
We are not only reducing the amount of tires that are being burnt in dump sites and landfills, and we all know that when you burn these tires, toxic fumes are released into the environment, which can then result in chronic health issues. We're also clearing out drainages. With tires and other solid waste in drainage, we usually see what happens. Flooding during the raining season, and then breeding ground for mosquitoes, which then causes malaria.
The existence of diverse opportunities along the value chain indicates an untapped gold mine that not only contributes to economic growth, but also social prosperity and environmental protection. If correctly managed, efficient waste recycling can result in job creation, renewable energy generation, air and water quality improvement, among other things. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
The news continues in East Africa, where a United Nations peacekeeper from Ghana has been killed alongside some civilians after clashes between rival local groups in the Abyei region on South Sudan's border with Sudan. According to the statement by the United Nations Interim Security Force for Abyei, UNISFA, the clashes occurred in 3 locations in the Abyei area, and this led to casualties and the evacuation of civilians to the UNISFA bases to provide safety for those caught up in the violence. The UN mission said it was still verifying the number of people killed, injured, and displaced by the violence. Head of Sudan's ruling Sovereign Council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, has started a 2-day official visit to Algeria for talks with Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune. Algeria's state-run television aired footage of Tebboune while receiving al-Burhan at El Maradia Presidential Palace in the capital, Algiers. No detail was provided by the Algerian authorities about the content of the talks between the 2 leaders. A statement by Sudan's Sovereign Council said al-Burhan's discussions in Algeria will cover bilateral relations and issues of mutual concern. Sunday's visit comes at a time when Sudan has been marred by fighting between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group since April 2023. Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa arrived Rome for the Italy-Africa Summit, where Rome is expected to present a strategic partnership with Africa aimed at improving trade, particularly in the area of energy, diplomacy, and migration. During the summit, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is expected to present a strategic plan for the African continent towards energy cooperation, among other areas. The scheme, known as the Mattei Plan and named after Enrico Mattei, is expected to lay the ground for cooperation beyond the energy sector. The summit is expected to give impetus to the Second Republic's thrust to achieve energy sufficiency for sustained economic growth. Away from the African continent, Iran's foreign minister is in Pakistan for talks as both nations seek to ease tensions after deadly cross-border strikes threaten diplomatic relations. Hossein Amiru-Abdollahian, Iran's foreign minister, arrived in Islamabad late Sunday, saying he would hold talks with his local counterpart, Jalil Abils-Jelani, and Prime Minister Anwar el-Haq Kako. On Saturday, gunmen in the southeastern Iran's Sistan Balochistan province killed 9 people, with Islamabad's ambassador identifying them as Pakistanis. The 2 countries, however, since announced they have decided to de-escalate and resume diplomatic missions, with the 2 ambassadors returning to their posts. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has met with reserve troops from Brigade 11, who recently returned from Gaza Strip. The army said Israeli forces were engaged in intensive battles in southern Gaza as CIA Chief William Burns met with Israeli, Egyptian, and Qatari officials for ceasefire talks.
נמצא מהמחבלים עם מכוניות פאר ומטוסים ומלונות, הוא חי בנוהל שהוא רוצה להקשיח את העמדות. מי שנמצא בשטח יודע טוב מאוד מה קורה. מאות מחבלים נכנעים, אלפים נהרגים, הורסים את מחסני האמל"ח. מחבלים נכנעים היום, אתמול, מעל הקרקע ומתחת לקרקע. לא דברים... את המלחמה הזאת אי אפשר לסיים בנקודות, רק בנוקאוט. אנחנו את החמאס חייבים לחסל, אחרת צריך שידע כל מחבל ברדיו של 100 קילומטרים ממדינת ישראל, שכנגד מעשה מהסוג הזה שנעשה, יש רק תוצאה אחת, זה חיסול היכולת הצבאית והשלטונית של החמאס. מחבלים יישארו תמיד, ורעיונות יישארו תמיד, אבל המערכת תקרוס כל עוד יש לנו...
And for business news, the business desk has the details.
On business, the Nigeria Railway Corporation made around 1.895 billion naira in income from passenger and freight shipments in the third quarter of 2023. In July, August, and September of 2023, the latest NBS rail transport data showed an increase of 103.1% from 933 million naira recorded in the same quarter of 2022. Based on the report, the NRC generated 1.49 billion naira from passengers during the period and recorded 286.78 million naira from cargo and goods. There were additional receipts totaling 119.22 million naira, reflecting a 1.05% increase in quarter 3 of 2023 compared to the 117.98 million naira collected in quarter 3 of 2022. When compared on a quarter-on-quarter basis, revenues from rail transport increased by 57.13% from 1.206 billion naira generated in the second quarter of 2023 to 1.89 billion naira for the third quarter. The Nigerian Exchange Limited has paused trading on the shares of GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC for eventual delisting from the exchange. This was contained in the weekly report of the exchange on its website. The suspension followed the approval of the scheme of arrangement GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC had between the companies and holders of its fully paid ordinary shares by the Securities and Exchange Commission and sanctioning of the scheme of arrangement by the Federal High Court. According to the report, the suspension was to enable the registrars to update the register of members for payment of the scheme consideration and eventual delisting of the company from the NGX. The Innovation, Development and Effectiveness in the Acquisition of Skills project in Nigeria is set to undergo a restructuring according to proposals reviewed by the World Bank. The initiative, which began with $200 million in funding, has had difficulty achieving its goals and will see major modifications to increase in its efficacy. This is according to the Implementation Status and Results Report for the project. The project was approved on February 18, 2020 to enhance the capacity of the Nigerian skills development system to produce relevant skills for the formal and informal sectors. Findings reveal that out of the $200 million, only about $34.88 million has been released by the World Bank. Due to the poor performance of the project, the World Bank has not released more funds, which are tied to meeting certain project criteria. The Kenyan government is seeking 70 billion Kenyan shillings in an infrastructure bond or IFB sale that will test the resolve of the Central Bank of Kenya to keep the cost of domestic borrowing in check. The 8.5-year infrastructure bond, which is the second of its type being sold in the current fiscal year, has been floated in a period of heavy maturities of government debt, underperforming revenue collection, and external borrowing, raising the pressure on CBK to take up expensive bids in bond sales. The bond will be on sale until February 14, having hit the markets on Wednesday. In February, domestic debt service obligations maturities plus coupon payments are estimated at 280.9 billion Kenyan shillings, nearly half of which lies on maturities of the 91-day Treasury bill. Finally, Uganda has once again chosen to work with a United Arab Emirates company as the primary developer and financier of its 60,000 barrels per day oil refinery. This decision was made despite the fact that financier lacks technical expertise or experience in developing downstream refining facilities for gas and oil. Energy Minister Ruth Nakambirwa announced that the government had picked Alpha MBM Investments LLC from the UAE, with which Kampala signed a memorandum of understanding last December outlining cooperation and negotiation terms for the refinery. Already set back several years, Kampala is keen on the quick takeover of the project that has since 2015 seen 3 investors, namely Russia's RT Resources, South Korea's SK Engineering, and the Albertine Graben Energy Consortium. All were invited for the job, but none went beyond the initial talks. And that's all on business news. Many thanks for watching. I am Likon Onobanjo.
And now to sports stories. In the world of sport, DR Congo goalkeeper Lionel Mpasi scored the winning kick in a penalty shootout as the Central Africans produced the latest shock at the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations by knocking seven-time champions Egypt out to reach the quarterfinals following a 1-1 draw after extra time. DR Congo went ahead for the first time at the tournament when Meshach Elia headed a Ioane Wissa's cross in the 37th minute. Their lead lasted just 9 minutes before Mustafa Mohamed converted a penalty on the stroke of halftime after Hamed Hegazi was caught by a failing arm. Egypt finished with 10 men after left-back Mohamed Hamdi was shown a second yellow card 7 minutes into extra time for a mistimed lunge on Simon Banza. And after Pharaoh's keeper, Gabaski, had clipped the top of the crossbar in the 9th round of the shootout, Mpasi stepped up to win it 8-7 on penalties. DR Congo will play Guinea in the quarterfinals at Abidjan's Alassane Ouattara Stadium on Friday after Selil National beat Equatorial Guinea 1-0 earlier on Sunday. And joining me live to talk about this is our correspondent, Favor Itwa. Favor, good morning from here. Favor, are you there? All right, Favor, if you could hear me, just respond.
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now. I mean, we're seeing some very shocking upsets. What is your impression?
All right, for the Nations Cup so far, it's been indeed full of surprises. With, of course, lots of teams going out of the tournament, favorites in terms of the likes of Egypt, not also forgetting Tunisia, I mean the Arab nation, and also even the West African country, talking about, Ghana, and then not forgetting the Central African country, Cameroon. It's been the underdogs going against the team tipped to go all the way to the finals. For instance, the latest of them has to do with, of course, DR Congo sending seven-time champion out of the tournament. That's talking about Egypt. And we all see that the Nations Cup is indeed an interesting one with a game that a lot of persons cannot definitely predict what will happen, as is, of course, a game of 90 minutes. And we saw the first penalties yesterday. So it's been an interesting competition so far with the results we've been having right here in Côte d'Ivoire.
All right. Is it safe to say that Mohamed Salah's injury was a big factor in Egypt's win? I mean, Egypt's exit, I mean.
Well, of course, for Mohamed Salah, he's a key figure when it comes to the team, talking about Egypt. But, of course, when you also look at how much of contribution he has been to his national team, is not the same with what we have at club level. Yes, you can't take anything away from what Salah would do any day, any time. He was definitely missed, but I think that the Egyptian team in general did not come into the tournament. They didn't win any game in 90 minutes in this tournament. They struggled to play the games. We saw how they qualified from their group stage, from the group phase. It was like a miracle for them, and it did also show against DR Congo. Normally, on paper, you expect Egypt to take DR Congo to the cleaners, but that was not the case, as of course the team has really nosedived in the last few years, and I think it's just the situation of what the team is at the moment.
All right. I mean, Favor, it seems this tournament so far has been favorable for Nigeria. I mean, what's next for the Super Eagles after their win over Cameroon?
All right, after the Super Eagles defeated Cameroon, a lot of persons have begun to dream about winning the title. Yes, Nigeria has faced, I think, for me, two key tests in this competition. First of which, of course, was the game against Côte d'Ivoire, which is the host nation. They took Côte d'Ivoire, they got a victory against Côte d'Ivoire. And then fast forward to the round of 16 against Cameroon, another perennial rival. They were able to do the job without having to, really sweat it out to get the results. I think they're really showing character. They've shown that they can take it, take any test given to them. Yes, they still have more tests, towards the title, but so far so good. They've shown seriousness. They've shown that they have the zeal. They've shown that they have the courage. They've also been able to, deliver their polling unit in every department, from the goalkeeping department to the defense, to the midfield, to the attack. I think it's been brilliant so far. And it's only a matter of allowed anyone to say, yes, Nigeria can win the title, having been faced with these challenges in the past few weeks.
All right, thank you so much for your coverage. Favor Itwa, our correspondent right there live in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you, Favor.
All right, Adebola, just to also let you know, we'll be leaving here right now to Yamoussoukro for the game between Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire. So, and it's about 2 hours plus journeying to cover that big clash later this evening.
All right, we'll keep tabs with you, Favor, and give us, to bring us all the latest updates regarding this competition. And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. ECOWAS ready for negotiation as Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger exit bloc. In Nigeria's southwest, Lagos PDP chairman has regained his freedom. Finally, we're told you that a UN peacekeeper has been killed in clashes between rival groups in South Sudan. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adedugba.